easy to become...
Okay, Thursday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the West Coast of the contiguous United States of America. Thank God it's Giovedi.
Yeah.
That's what we call Thursday because Thursday is truly the gateway to the weekend. And that's why we honor the great God Jove. Yes, indeed. Thank you for your patience. The great God Skype decided to keep its hand on the wheels of existence and took us a little bit to convince them that our earthly desires should take precedent over, I don't know, some sort of heavenly conjuring. Now, Wink, I need to know how you're doing.
So far, so good. Not bad. Not bad. It is 78 degrees, heading towards yesterday's number 82 or so. So we'll take that. It's about the same day as yesterday. Partly cloudy, partly sunny. Nice day. Actually get some stuff done. So that's the kind of day I kind of like. Reminder to get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And the contribute donate buttons continue to be to the leftish of the chat room link. So thank you for taking a gander over there and maybe acting to keep the resistance bills paid off. Ooh, well. Yes, I should also mention that after show podcast can be had by way of Spreaker. That's the raw data file. Comes up fairly soon after the show. And the more perfected files that go into the daily briefing are had later by way of iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently, let's see if it's changed a bit. We're up to 40 degrees finally. We will be much warmer today than yesterday. Yesterday we got up to about 70, and today we will be getting up to, 80.
Yeah.
Slight increase in weather on tomorrow, Friday, will be about 86. And by Monday, we should be in, the mid-90s. So I guess spring.
Yeah, spring is sprung, I think.
Well, come on. It's still spring here, and I do live in an area that gets fairly warm. But I actually expect some more rain to be coming. We'll see if my barometers, which are like my knees and my shoulders.
Yeah. Indeed,
I know. We'll just see if they still are correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I still feel, when I say I feel a little bit of rain coming on, I literally feel it.
Indeed, yeah.
Ooh, boy,
I thought that was always just some sort of myth or something back in the day, but turns out it's true.
Yeah. You never knew it was like a visceral experience rather than just some literary flourish.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
God. Well, weather from around the world is brought to you by weather stations from around the world.
There you go.
In London, it is now 57 with a light rain. Paris, France is 72 and mostly cloudy. Rome, Italy is 81 and clear. San Francisco, 57 and clear. Los Angeles, 62 and partly cloudy. Dallas, Texas, 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kansas City, Missouri is 73 degrees and clear. And New York is a neat 90 degrees and clear.
There you go.
All right. 90 degrees and clear.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see any humidity in the midst of this? What the percentage is?
A
Is this the
couple more
time of year?
weeks.
I mean, we should ask Roaring Girl if it's
Yeah.
humid yet.
Yeah, you're looking at a couple more weeks, and it will be. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's going to happen pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. I should warn you. Oh, that's right. You probably won't be attending this year, but I should warn those who are going to Atlanta. Yeah.
Right.
You'll find out why the kudzu grows there. And it's not because there's any kind of lack of oppressive. Let's just say it's very humid in Atlanta that time of year.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was working for Gulf Oil, when they shut down their exploration and production operation on the West Coast, I had an offer to move to Georgia and actually work out of the offices in Atlanta. But I'd been there playing music before, and I was thinking, nice place to visit. I don't know. Maybe you have to be born here.
Yeah.
To,
get used to it. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, way too humid for me. Paris is surprisingly oppressively humid.
Yeah,
in
that's
August.
weird. Yeah.
That's why. Well, no, it's necessarily weird. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, they're not that close to an ocean,
right?
And that's why everybody heads to the ocean.
Exactly.
Take a month off. Week? Get out of here. A month.
Yeah,
and they do.
They do. Yeah.
Goodbye.
They shut it right down. Yep.
Okay. Big news day, of course. Rather than a Friday news dump, we're going to have to do a 5:00 news dump. Wink.
Okay.
Because every day at 5:00, something new happens.
Yeah.
Remember yesterday when we were talking to Angela Marks, Angie in Washington State? We made reference to, what we think is tops now will be topped, and it'll be unimaginable. And who knew that Robert Mueller would be reanimated from the coffin? I mean, he was in the box.
Right.
And they gave him the special solution so that, he can walk around in the daytime.
Right.
So I got to tell you, I think that somebody in the Trump White House said, what we can do is that we'll take our chances on a criminal and counter-espionage probe, because that'll kind of delay it for a while. We'll take our chances with that, because that's sort of what will happen in a sense here. We won't be hearing the blockbuster news about, what we're going to be talking about today. Because a criminal probe, it's in Mueller's interest, especially if we're going to bring counter-espionage or criminal charges. One of the reasons that so many people got off scot-free from Iran-Contra is because they gave statements in public testimony. And so prosecutors and investigators on that level don't want that to happen. So there has to be some sort of agreement about what can be talked about in open session. And actually, I believe that any incriminating evidence in closed session might preclude the use of that testimony in a criminal charge. I have to look into that. But regardless, there's going to be not as much of a megaphone on this. But it is sort of a gamble, would you say? Isn't it just like a mob mentality? We'll take our chances with the cops. Yeah. Well, today we will be attending to these issues, and they are serious indeed. An immigrant found dead in his cell was kept in solitary confinement for 19 days. Punishment for you. White Tulsa police officer Betty Shelby is acquitted in the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man with his hands in the air. Well, you never know when they're going to be a threat. Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And right-wing extremist Sheriff David Clark presided over a jail, or actually still presides over a jail, where an inmate died of thirst, and women were forced to give birth in shackles, so he's perfect for Trump's Department of Homeland Security.
Hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
And here's where we get into, little bit of the Jean Le Carre portion of the show. On the last half today, we report that Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort emerge as key figures in the criminal and counter-espionage probe as special counsel Robert Mueller takes over the Russia investigation. I know they say Mueller, but it's Mueller. Miller. He's going to grind away. We keep grinding and grinding and grinding. And the FBI, in conjunction with other federal agencies, are investigating Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak's work with Michael Flynn, setting up a back channel between Trump and Putin to bypass the U.S. government. We're way past Oliver North here, Wake. Way past. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Codes community calendar and more on the after show with that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast with his barely noticeable East Coastal elitism. But by dint of the fact that he's in New York, flaming liberal.
Exactly.
Everybody in America calls Dianne Feinstein a flaming liberal except the people in the Bay Area.
Right.
So I'm just saying, okay. And this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast, and, I used to be quite a resident of the Bay Area, but now I'm up in Oregon because, like dying salmon, we go back to the place of our birth. And we do this 5 days. Oh, my name is Justice, by the way. And we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this specific, particular, and peculiar tear on the fabric of space-time. Because who loves you, baby? All right. And we do. Love will save the world. Or at least our sense of place when we gasp our last. Really?
Yeah.
Every devotee of every love guru knows that. Man, oh man, oh man. Oh, Roger Ailes died. Ding dong, the witch is dead, the wicked witch, the wicked witch. I have all sorts of, not all sorts of people, but some people. I understand, when someone passes, you're supposed to have a bit of, if not reverence, you don't pile on them.
Right.
But I don't know, certain personages who have had an impact on history, I don't know. Maybe the rules don't necessarily apply. And this is how I usually judge things. Goebbels had a family. Did we reserve any kind of, I don't know, critical description of their place in history because we didn't want to offend his family? Sorry. Don't say bad things about Roger Ailes because he has family. Goebbels had family. Okay? I do remember having a bit of a discussion with some friends when Nixon died. And I was kind of, coming out with the Nixon jokes. They thought it was kind of irreverent. But as I mentioned, Nixon was a crook. And I saw the real-time impacts of his crookedness. And personal, too, extended family members falling under the aegis of, a madman. I don't know what else to call him. It's odd. So much time has passed, people kind of forget how much Nixon was hated.
And he was, yep.
Was big time. All right. Let's get into these stories here. Now, though this article doesn't necessarily bring out the intersection of private and government enterprise, I think a lot of the problems that arise out of these institutions is because of that melding. And this is out of Think Progress by Esther Ushile. An immigrant detainee kept in solitary confinement for more than 2 weeks was found dead by suicide at the Stewart Detention Center in Georgia on Monday. John Jimenez Yosef a 27-year-old undocumented immigrant from Panama, was found unresponsive in his cell by, quote, self-inflicted strangulation, end quote, according to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE. We freeze you to death, don't we? He was pronounced dead at 2:15 a.m. at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus. Jimenez was kept in solitary confinement for 19 days, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is investigating the case. An ICE spokesperson told Think Progress Tuesday Jimenez had been placed in disciplinary segregation twice. Once between April 13th and 18th for fighting with another detainee, and a second time on April 27th for violating facility rules. His isolation was extended after a second disciplinary violation. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution further reported that Jimenez was placed in solitary confinement after he was observed jumping off a second-floor walkway. Okay. Might as well punish him for that. Jimenez's isolation was extended for 3 days after he exposed himself to a nurse, the publication added. Now, you were an MP, Wink. So, in your professional capacity,
yeah,
as a guard and a cop,
yep,
you would probably think there was something mentally wrong with this guy.
Oh yeah,
exposing himself to a nurse, jumping off a second floor. That doesn't sound to me like he's being, trying to escape. Sounds to me like he's trying to dash his head against the concrete.
Yeah.
This is just me. But of course, that's colored with the fact that we now know that he killed himself. Right?
Right.
So I don't know. I would think that you might have been trained to kick this up to somebody in a higher pay grade that could handle somebody like
Indeed,
it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we were. Yeah.
So to just, I don't know, throw him in solitary. That'll take care of it. Cheaper, I guess, than calling in somebody with a higher pay grade.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, because we would just pick up the phone and call the commanding officer and say, hey, you got a guy down here. Pick him up.
Okay, now Jimenez entered ICE custody on March 2nd following his release from local law enforcement custody in Wake County, North Carolina on a felony conviction for larceny of a motor vehicle. He stole a car. The ICE press release said immigrants who serve out their prison term in local custody are often held in what's called an immigrant detainer to be turned over to federal immigration authorities for potential deportation proceedings following their release. ICE has contacted Panamanian consular representatives who have contacted the next of kin. How nice. Couldn't keep the guy alive, but, we can get a hold of his next of kin when something bad happens. Under ICE guidelines, people may be placed in medical isolation if they are a high risk for violent behavior because of a mental health condition, but such isolation should not be used for punitive purposes according to the guidelines. The facility shall have a mental health staffing component on call to respond to the needs of a detainee population 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But as a recent report by the immigrant advocacy group Project South and the Penn State Law Center for Immigrants' Rights Clinic alleged, mental health resources are minimal at Stewart Detention Center, a facility run by the private prison company, here we go, Core Civic, previously known as Corrections Corporation of America, because Core Civic sounds so much better than Corrections Corporation of America, which has been sued how many thousands of times? Better change that name.
There you go. Yep.
With only a couple of men reporting that they received some type of mental health care. There is no mental health service, a male detainee immigrant from Somalia told report researchers. There is no therapy. They only put people in segregation when someone is mentally ill. Segregation meaning solitary confinement. I guess this goes back to the old crazy houses of yore, right? Throw them in the padded cell.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of care going on.
They're able to bash their heads in after that. We did what we could. I have to say that regardless whether they are mandated to have mental health component to this incarceration facility, it's still cheaper to throw them in the padded cell. You can call that a medical facility, like they call, the gulags they keep the little 5 and 6 year olds in. You know what they call those? Daycare centers out in the middle of the desert, barbed wire.
Yeah.
Well, Jimenez has been the 7th immigrant to die at an ICE detention facility so far this year, and the first fatality of a detainee at Stewart in 8 years. I suppose the accountants would say, I don't know, percentages on that are pretty good. We're doing all right. 8 years without a death. Damn. This facility has gone 3 weeks without a suicide. Wonder if they see that in their little... I'm sorry for being cynical, but, when you make it into a machine, the machine grinds and grinds and grinds, doesn't it? Well, this was obviously a shocking thing that happened. I don't mean necessarily Betty Shelby getting acquitted. That wasn't so shocking to me. But seeing a black man with his hands up in the air getting shot, that was rather shocking. And the world saw it. But when a cop fears for their lives, it doesn't matter if the person had no gun and had no opportunity to be violent. This is from Reuters. An Oklahoma jury on Wednesday found a white Tulsa police officer, a jury of her peers, not guilty of manslaughter in the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man in a confrontation caught on video last September, stoking a national debate over racial bias in law enforcement. God, I'm so glad we're post-racial now. Betty Shelby, 43, was acquitted after a week-long trial. She denied race was a factor in the killing and insisted her actions were driven entirely by the behavior of the man she shot, Terrence Kutchner, age 40, after his car was left blocking a road. Okay. Police videos of the incident were seen globally, and some civil rights advocates have argued that race was a factor. Rights advocates saw the Crutcher case as another in a string of deaths of unarmed black men at the hands of the police in the United States that has spawned periodic protests of the Black Lives Matter movement. Lawyers for Shelby have said she believed that Crutcher may have been trying to reach through a partially open window for a weapon in the vehicle when she shot him. That's a tough pill to swallow. The facts were there. The elements were there. Terrence's hands were in the air. He was not an immediate threat, Crutcher's sister Tiffany said after the verdict. When he put his hands in the air, I thought he had an opportunity to reach through a partially cracked open window and be able to grab a weapon on the other side, on the passenger side, and then come out and you don't want anybody coming out of a car with something in their hands. We were taught when someone, might be reaching into an open window, there's only bad things that can happen. So don't go reaching for your car registration, okay? Of course, I was always taught I am going to open up my glove compartment and get my car registration and insurance card. Or I am reaching for the visor in which to get my car registration and my insurance card. We were always taught to, announce what you don't make any furtive movements. But I guess putting your hands up in the air when the cops are telling you to put your hands up in the air is definitely deemed a threat. So that's the other part, of course, they turned down the audio. But he was told to put his hands in the air, and he put his hands in the air, and one of the other cops shot him. And that happened to be her. Feared for her life. It was okay. It's the way she was trained, wink. Nothing systemic or institutional about it.
Exactly.
Jurors were visibly emotional, and some cried when the verdict was read by the judge, some 9 hours after they began deliberating. Wow, they worked overtime for the day. Damn. What I respect is the process. The true reality is that we all knew it was a difficult case, said Tulsa County District Attorney Steve Kunzweiler, who prosecuted the case. Shelby's lawyers did not comment to Reuters after the verdict was read. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess any prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. But I guess you can't get a conviction if you're, for, I don't know, letting the ham go rancid. Whew. Now, the case hinged on videos in which Crutcher can be seen with his hands in the air shortly before he was shot. Tulsa police have said Crutcher was unarmed and there was no weapon in his vehicle. Shelby told the jury that she was taught during training that if a suspect reaches into an area like a car, an officer does not let them pull their arm back because they might be holding a gun. Well, an area like the air. You never know. When someone puts their hands in the air, you don't know when they bring it back down. They might have a gun in their hand. Wink.
Maybe.
Better safe than sorry. All right. When they reach into an area like a car, but he put his hands up in the air. So I guess the air is like a car. People travel through it. She said the first time she fired a weapon on duty was when she shot Crutcher, who did not speak during their encounter, according to court testimony from officers on the scene. Meaning, apparently she didn't tell the guy to, don't reach for a gun.
Right.
See, that's the other part of your training. When you're beating the crap out of somebody, you got to yell, stop resisting. So she kind of fell down on her training. When you're going to murder someone, you're supposed to say, stop reaching for a gun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, it wasn't allowed in court, but the police did release that he had some PCP in his system, but not enough to cause him to be a threat. The prosecutor said not enough reason for Shelby to resort to deadly force. Yep. Well, if they're crazy or on drugs, kill them. This next article is by Aaron Rupert out of Think Progress. On Wednesday afternoon, Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark announced he is leaving his current position to take a job in the Trump administration. Yes, we know David Clark. During the presidential campaign, Clark was one of Trump's most vocal supporters, but as he traveled the country, speaking on Trump's behalf, and made regular appearances on Fox News last year, 4 inmates died at the Milwaukee County Jail he oversees. The family of Terrell Thomas, a mentally ill inmate who died of dehydration after officers reportedly shut off his water, has since sued. A prosecutor's inquest recently resulted in charges being recommended against 7 jail employees involved in Thomas's death. But when Clark was asked about Thomas's death in March, he criticized the media for not devoting more coverage to the crimes that he solved. Oh, really? I have nearly 1,000 inmates. I don't know all their names, but is this the guy who was in custody for shooting up the Putzawani casino, causing one man to be hit by gunfire while in possession of a firearm by a career convicted felon? The media never reports sad stories about him. If that is him, then at least I know who you're talking about. My police friends, either family or, friends, when Rodney King had the crap beat out of him, to a man, and they were all men, I have to say, said, well, did you know he was speeding? He was going 80 miles an hour through a 20 mile per hour speed limit neighborhood, and he was speeding? I go, well, does that justify having 6 cops beat the crap out of him with billy clubs? He says, well, you don't know what it's like to be in a chase. I mean, you get all your adrenaline. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very orderly. Law and orderly. Sounds like you're venting your aggressions on somebody because they pissed you off. And they kind of said, yeah, what's wrong with that? So Clark has this attitude. Oh, you mean the guy that shot up that casino and some guy got hit by a ricochet shot? He died of dehydration, one of the most painful and gruesome deaths imaginable. The reason we don't really hear about that kind of death, I mean, died by fire, oh, yeah, that's bad. Yeah, dehydration is not a good way to go. Okay, well, I should mention here that the Department of Homeland Security says we have no idea about anybody filling this position that he's talking about. And people in his own state of Wisconsin said, well, we haven't gotten any resignation letters. And so who knows? David Clark is, I guess he's going to take over Arpaio's position of, being the lunatic sheriff. So we'll see about that. But his name has been floated in various aspects of law enforcement in the Trump administration. And might as well, because, when a few people go to jail, I should remind folks, Sheriff David Clark has also taken money from Putin. And he was in Russia bragging about it. So there is that. All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar, and then a blockbuster story there in the last half. We'll go through that with some resolve. And you are listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
Donald Trump, the amazing wonderkind of global luxury living, and now our nation's phantasmagoric fast-charging president, is proving to be a legislative magician. In his campaign, Trump's #1 promise was that he would, quote, immediately repeal the entirety of Obamacare. Then, hocus pocus and abracadabra, simultaneously replace it with, quote, great health care for a fraction of the price. Wow, that's why his White House media operation calls him President Action, President Impact. But oops, it seems that the amazing Donald has abruptly learned that what magicians do is not magic, they just perform illusions. In other words, it's fakery. So Trump is now caught in the spotlight of reality, unable to produce a workable plan to repeal and replace Obamacare as he had so glibly promised. In fact, the GOP replacement scheme he's been backing would leave millions of people with no health care coverage while reducing the benefits and jacking up insurance payments for millions of others. Frustrated, President Action recently whined to a meeting of state governors that nobody knew that health care could be so complicated. Of course, by nobody, he meant that he didn't know. Therefore, no one could have known since he knows everything. But wait, in a truly amazing magical act, the Donald has now pulled a rabbit out of his hat. His new Trump Care plan, he brags, will guarantee that every American will have access to health coverage. Before you erupt in applause, however, notice the trick word he's using. Access. That doesn't mean you'll get coverage, you'll just get access to coverage, if you can afford it. It's the same as promising that everyone will get access to owning a private jet, just like Trump. This is Jim Hightower saying, see, he truly is magical.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back. And thank you for sticking with us. This is the after show of the Wink of Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York, 21 on the East Coast. Our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud, whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the after show, to span the globe, the solar system, out past the Oort cloud, and beyond. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Sure we do.
Yeah.
There's some fiber filament out there, maybe it will. Well, actually, no. There is a radio signal that does go out.
Yeah, there you go.
Eventually it will be there.
Yep.
I just don't want our message coming back embedded in some like Trump crystal knocked speech.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Oh man.
Yeah, that would suck. Talk about contact.
Yeah.
All right, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes Community Diary is facilitated as it is every Thursday by Paradise 50.
Yes.
And he opens the diary with a little essay on coincidences. He's in the medical field, and a young patient client was speaking about things that happened that day. Did you know that on this day or the same day that Hitler died or Hitler was born, the Deepwater Horizon blew up? Coincidences, right? Well,
right.
They're just coincidences, but it got him to thinking. It's kind of fun for entertainment purposes. What happened on particular days, and what happened on your birthday, for instance, this day in history. So, and he goes through a list of them, and I would suggest peruse it, and then you'll be entertained endlessly. New groups forming. Wisconsin Cossacks have, of course, been forming their groups. So, Cosmail Chris the Colladem, if you would like to become a part of Wisconsin Co's. And why wouldn't you? Even if you're not in Wisconsin, you can.
Right.
But the idea of course, is that the Connect, Unite, Act is that we connect with our far-flung friends, and then we unite in the cause, and then we act. So we can do that. Okay. Houston area Cossacks will be meeting up on Tuesday, May 23rd at Hamburger Mary's, 2409 Grant Street, for dinner at 7 p.m. It is a fundraising event, of course, so you'll be paying for your meal, and then there'll be a $10 fee for the games that follow. And all proceeds then go directly to the Welcoming Schools program. Contact Chris Love to become part of that, and there is an announcement diary for more details that he has penned. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa have been organizing the third Epic Glacier National Park meetup held this year on June 30th through July 2nd. Quite extensive itinerary. My gosh. And, when I like to go camping, on hikes and stuff, I don't know about you, but I mark my day by the meals. We had breakfast, and then, we're going to do this stuff, but then lunch, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then lunch, and then, you do your thing, and then there's dinner, and you're working for dinner. So there's quite an itinerary, and seems to have quite a bit of food happening, too. So get a hold of Thinking Fella and Ojibwa if you'd like to take part in that. That's coming up, too, June 30th. And the Daily Co's annual Cheers and Jeers dinner at Netroots Nation this year in Atlanta, Georgia, will be occurring Wednesday, August 9th at 5:30 p.m. Cosmail Navajo to RSVP a seat at the table, and I think it should be plural, tables, because that's one hella big, big table. One of those rectangular ones that just go, like for miles on end. Maybe it's better to split them up and have about, I don't know, 300 to 600 round tables. Fit 8 people apiece.
Yep.
Be fine. All right. That is your Connect. That is your Connect Unite Act Daily Co's community calendar for the 18th of May of 2017. Wow. When I was a little kid,
that's where all the cool kids are going to be. Is at that C&J dinner? No question.
There you go. And I was going to just to comment more about coincidences. When I was a kid, and I was like even more full of myself than I am now. Hard to imagine, but when you're a kid, it's standard, right?
Yeah.
I always thought it was interesting that Einstein died the same year I was born, almost like the universe wasn't big enough for the both of us.
Right.
And now I'm looking around thinking, I don't know, there might be not enough room for the universe to hold me.
There you go.
Kind of humbles you. If it doesn't, then you're Trump.
Yeah.
See how that works? Okay. All right. This article is by Bob Brigham. And let me see what journal they don't say. So I guess this is a new person at Raw Story. I don't recognize this fellow. Bob Brigham, Raw Story. NBC News reports 2 close aides to Donald Trump have emerged as, quote, key figures in the investigation into Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. Or as I like to call it, the treasonous act of sabotage to destroy America. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here instead of working for like a reputable journalistic investigative.
Right.
Well, Roger Ailes is dead. Maybe I can take over without doing all the sex thing.
Yeah, maybe. There's a possibility. There's an opening, sure.
Opening. Now, 4 law enforcement officials told NBC News that multiple grand jury subpoenas have been issued in connection with former campaign manager Paul Manafort and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. It's Steen! Rosenstein!
Yeah.
It's Stein. Announced yesterday that former FBI Director Robert Mueller will head the Justice Department's investigation into Trump campaign collusion with Russia and Russia interference in the 2016 election campaign. Now, I have to take note. The Justice Department is my music show on Sundays.
Right.
Music Sans Frontières, Music Without Borders. The Department of Justice is where Robert Mueller will be leading the investigation. Not from my music show, the Justice Department on Sunday nights, 8 on the Pacific, 11 on the East Coast for 1 hour of music from around the world. Okay, just to be clear.
Yeah, and even in the press, they usually call it the DOJ. Yeah. So yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I got the Justice Department. I looked it up, and they're officially the Department of Justice.
Yes. Yes.
And my music show is the Justice Department.
Exactly.
8 p.m. on the West Coast on Sundays. That's 11 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm trying to get a plug in here, Wink. Can't you tell? Come on.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Work with me, man. Work with me.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the matters at hand. NBC News also reports that both Manafort and Flynn, this is the big one, Wink, have been formally categorized as, quote, subjects of a criminal investigation.
There you go.
I hope you can let this go, James Comey is alleging Trump told him in reference to the investigation into Michael Flynn. Now, the investigation is unique, being a hybrid of both a criminal investigation and a counterintelligence probe. Now, that's a first. Trump brings us all these firsts, Wink. They're all firsts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
NBC said investigators are examining evidence including contacts, money transfers, business relationships, and ding, 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 real estate transactions. You know, like $10 million condos are really only about $1 million.
Right.
Russian money laundering here, Russian money laundering there. We'll see. Now, another aspect to the whole Mueller aspect to this,
right,
is that all that Trump has to do is find a Robert Bork to fire him. And I have to say, the whole Republican Party seems to be filled with Robert Borks now. In fact, they're in line. Probably they're trying to get in line to be the one to fire Mueller. Remember back in the day, he went through a few Department of Justice people before they resigned in protest rather than fire Archibald Cox. Okay.
Right.
So who fired Archibald Cox? Robert Bork. Come on, people, your history. And then, for a reward for doing that, he was offered the Supreme Court position. And, of course, Democrats saw that as a thumb in the eye, punishment for taking their great leader away. He was trying to mold America into his vision of paranoia. They're really into that. The more paranoid the demagogue, the more they're going to fall into line for him. Or as Ryan says, what's said in the mob family stays in the mob family.
Right.
Okay, I added the mob part, but you might as well have said it. Jesus. Okay, well, what are you going to do? I'll tell you what you're going to do. We're going to work through this investigation because lest we remind folks, it was took 18 months? 14 months of an active investigation in Watergate, Wink.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Started when I would have been finishing out my second semester in high school. But yeah, I had to graduate early. Because I was one of those kind of kids. And so by the time April rolled around, when my best friend John Koenigshofer and myself organized the Impeach Nixon rally at Richard M. Nixon Park in Yorba Linda, that's where the Nixon Library is now, folks. That was actually quite a fast amount of time. So we talk about how quickly things are transpiring now. But it could take another good 8 months to 14 months, don't you think?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, easily. Yep. They'll drag it out as much as they can.
So I don't
this
call
isn't
that
going to happen in 4 weeks.
I don't. Well, the point being is that to me, that's still a tremendously fast amount of time.
It is. Yeah, even 8 to 12 months or so.
Because what happened in the Watergate probe, the reason they considered it to be, to be so fast in and of itself was just, there was a lot of evidence to sift through. There was a lot to consider, a lot of analysis, a lot of decisions. And, of course, you didn't have Richard Nixon, going out on, whatever media platform that would have, reached the most people. And, let's see, who would he have been saying it to? I'm trying to think, because most of the people are on the side. Like, he wouldn't have dissed John Mitchell. John Mitchell went down in flames with him.
Right.
But, thumbing his nose at some lead investigator and, kind of making a cop mad. You don't want to do that.
Right.
There's two things. Don't make a cop fear for his life, and don't make a cop mad.
There you go.
Jesus. Everybody knows that. Except for privileged rich boys. See, maybe you might concur with me on this, Wink. Trump has had no real experience in living a life in which the laws apply to him.
Right.
Because, he can always come in the back door, sit at any place he wants. He can grease the palms of anybody. Apparently, he's been, since the late 80s at least, pardon me, having business operations in Baltic countries, and then with the fall of the Soviet Union, moving in to personages from the area. Right. Now we know why, because Kushner's dad was prosecuted by Christie when Christie, something happened here. It looks like we were, you know what, Wink, we're not on right now. We're,
okay.
Yes. Okay. Nope. We're back. For some reason, folks, we had a little glitch in our stream and we were playing the backup song until, we came back on.
Could have been Time Warner here or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. We had a little bit of a glitch there, but we are back, and we're just getting ready to speak about Flynn and the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak setting up a back channel between Trump and Putin to bypass the U.S. government. This is an article out of Reuters, and let me scroll down quickly here. And additional reporting by John Walcott out of Washington, D.C., Natalia Zinitz and Alessandra Prentice in Kiev, and Christian Lowe in Moscow, editing by Kevin Krolicki and Ross Colvin, and presumably they're in New York or Washington, D.C. Michael Flynn and other advisors to Donald Trump's campaign were in contact with Russian officials and others with Kremlin ties in at least 18 calls and emails, which is about 16 more than what we were told, Wink. The last 7 months of the 2016 presidential race, current and former U.S. officials familiar with the exchanges told Reuters. The previously undisclosed interactions form part of the record now being reviewed by FBI and congressional investigators probing Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election and contacts between Trump's campaign and Russia. 6 of the previously undisclosed contacts described to Reuters were phone calls between Kislyak and Trump advisors, including Flynn. Would Jared be involved there in any way? I wonder. Would Bannon? Trump's first national security advisor, of course Flynn, 3 current and former officials said. So, when you get journalistic corroboration, it's 3 or more sources. Conversations between Flynn and Kislyak accelerated after the November 8th vote as the two discussed establishing a back channel for communication between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin that could bypass the U.S. national security bureaucracy, which both sides considered hostile to improved relations, 4 current U.S. officials said.
Right.
Improved relations.
Yeah.
Yes. In January, the Trump White House initially denied any contacts with Russian officials during the 2016 campaign. The White House and advisors to the campaign have since confirmed 4 meetings between Kislyak and Trump advisors during that time. The people who described the contacts to Reuters said they had seen no evidence of wrongdoing or collusion between the campaign and Russia in the communications reviewed so far. But the disclosure could increase the pressure on Trump and his aides to provide the FBI and Congress with a full account of interactions with Russian officials and others with links to the Kremlin during and immediately after the 2016 election. So I guess what they're saying is that these unnamed sources out of the White House said, well, they didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
No. They weren't like stealing voting records out of congressional districts and then people in the White House with intimate knowledge about how our election process works so they could like lead the way about the most damaging and most beneficial and fruitful data that they could get. They wouldn't have done that. No, it wasn't about that. All right. Members of the House and Senate intelligence committees have gone to the CIA and National Security Agency to review transcripts and other documents related to contacts between the Trump campaign advisors and associates and Russian officials and others with links to Putin. The U.S. Justice Department said yesterday that, of course, it appointed Robert Mueller as special counsel to grind away until he's going to expose every last Russian mole. You know that. The only problem is that we're not going to hear about it until it's done. And maybe, see, this is the point that's being made now, is that there has to be a paper written up. In addition to the 6 phone calls involving Kislyak, the communications described to Reuters involved another 12 calls, emails, or text messages between Russian officials or people considered to be close to Putin and Trump campaign advisors. Okay. So, the point I was making before we got cut off from our little tech glitch is that Trump got rid of, we keep hearing about loyalty to Flynn.
Right.
Well, one of the most loyal people was Rudy Giuliani. He got cut loose. Chris Christie was cut loose. Of course, mostly I believe because he convicted Kushner's dad on racketeering charges when Christie was a U.S. attorney. But there was a loyalty between Christie and Trump that wasn't a strong enough tie. So what is it about Flynn? What is it? I guess we'll have to find out about 5 o'clock today when another ominous news dump of, galactic proportions will take place, Wink. Yeah. So we'll have to talk about it tomorrow. There's no other way around it. There's no other way around it, Wink.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end, of course, of our broadcast period for today. We have Tom Hartman coming up about 6 minutes after the hour, of course. Randy Rhodes at 1 p.m. on the West Coast, 4 p.m. on the East Coast. And that's 2 hours of some on fire.
Right.
Randy Air Force.
There you go.
Journalism. So stay tuned for that. We'll have the Battle of the Species by the Antibalas Afrobeat Orchestra playing in the interim before Hartman. So we'll be back here bright and bushy tomorrow with even more earth-shattering news because that's the times we live in, folks. All right, stay tuned to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Because truly, who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink, I will see you on the other side.
All right. We're out.